Hey guys, my name is Z and you're watching MakesItEasy, and welcome to the IGCSE Biology series, where today we have topic 2, which is respiration and gas exchange. And then here's the lessons and topics that I'll be covering. We have aerobic and anaerobic respiration, respiration investigation, photosynthesis and respiration, alveoli, human's internal structure, ventilation, diffusion and gas exchange, and stomata and smoking, and lastly we have ciliated epithelium. So for the first topic for the first lesson, we have aerobic and anaerobic respiration. And aerobic respiration takes place in every cell in the mitochondria, and glucose is broken down into carbon dioxide and water, and oxygen is involved and lots of energy is released. So here's the equation, and you get ATP energy for the energy. And for the anaerobic respiration, it takes place in the cytoplasm, and it only allows a little energy to be released from glucose, and it's a short-term solution to a temporary shortage of oxygen. And organisms like bacteria can't live without oxygen, and they respire this way. And here's anaerobic respiration in human, and here's for plants and yeast. And here's more on the oxygen debt, like for the anaerobic respiration. Oxygen debt is the amount of extra oxygen needed by the muscles or tissues to oxidize the lactic acid, and the body needs more energy when undergoing vigorous exercise, which therefore requires more energy to breathe deeper and faster. So you can have a read for yourself for oxygen debt. So here's more on ATP energy, and you can have a read. Like the ATP energy is energy. They are formed from glucose and other minerals such as carbs, fats, and proteins. And they are like complex organic chemical which provide energy to carry out the processes in a living cell. And they are produced in the mitochondria of cells. Then we have aerobic and anaerobic respiration on organelles. And here organelles found in both animals and plant cells. We have nucleus, contains the DNA. Cytoplasm, which is a liquid substance in which chemical reactions occur. Cell membrane, which contains receptor molecules, control what goes in and out. And mitochondria, which is the site of respiration. And ribosome, which is the site of protein synthesis. And for organelles only found in plants, we have the chloroplast, which is uses in photosynthesis. It contains chlorophyll. A permanent vacuole, which contains cell sap and is found within the cytoplasm, which improves the cell rigidity. And for cell wall, it's made out of cellulose to provide strength to the cell. Then we have respiration investigation. We have different things here. We have heat production, which is the germinating seed test. So add 2 types of seeds into 2 vacuum cloths, one for boiled seeds and one for germinating peas. And you can have a read for the experiment and for the heat production. And here's to test the CO2 production, like the lime water test. And here's the photosynthesis with respiration, which is the hydrogen carbonate indicator. And here's factors affecting the rate of respiration using a respirometers. So we move on to the last one, which is investigating the test for water using cobalt chloride. And cobalt chloride paper indicates when water is present. When H2O is present, the color of the paper will change from blue to pink. However, if there's no water, the cobalt paper will remain blue due to some chemical reactions happening. Then we have respiration investigation, which is CORMMS. And as we talked about last biology lesson, CORMMS is a way of experimenting, designing an experiment. So it stands for change, organisms, repeat, measure, and same. So here's a CORMMS to investigate this experiment. And the C will be temperature of the water bath, same type of yeast for O, repeated 3 times. And the M is rate of respiration, and M is calculate the rate of respiration by dividing it by time, and S is the volume of yeast and glucose and time. So basically we're trying to investigate how big the balloon will be after placing it in different water baths. So here you can have a look of the results table and the results. So here's a 10 degrees Celsius, 40 degrees Celsius and 60 degrees Celsius. So as we can interpret from this experiment and this result, the 20 degrees Celsius one is the middlemost biggest balloon, because the cells of all the yeast didn't denature, but they have little kinetic energy, which causes it to move slower. But for the 40 degree, it's the optimum temperature for enzyme to work. So the yeast, it's working in its optimum temperature, which makes it the biggest. And for 60 degrees Celsius, the enzymes have denatured, not killed, denatured. So that's why there's no chemical reaction taking place, which will increase the CO2 inside. So here we have photosynthesis and respiration. And here's two things to note. Plants photosynthesize during the daytime and when there's sunlight. And plants respire all day because they are living organisms. And photosynthesis and respiration. Only green plants photosynthesize because they have chloroplasts as green. But respiration occurs in the cells of all living things to release energy. So here's the difference between photosynthesis and energy needed, and respiration, which is energy released. So if you notice, it's basically the opposite, like carbon dioxide plus water equals glucose plus oxygen. Glucose plus oxygen equals carbon dioxide plus water. You can see it's the same. And here's O2 and CO2. And here's the different time, like 12 AM to 12 PM to 12 AM. You can see the different amount of oxygen and amount of carbon dioxide. And an important thing to note here, you can have a read for yourself. So here we have alveoli, and here are adaptations of alveoli for gas exchange. It has large surface area, a rich network of capillaries around them. They have moist lining to maintain concentration gradient, and they have thin walls which are 1 cell thick to reduce diffusion distance and increase the rate of diffusion. So here are the features of alveoli. The gas exchange in the lungs happens in the alveoli, and alveoli is responsible to remove carbon dioxide gas and replace it with oxygen. And diffusion from year 9 is a net movement of particles from a high concentration gradient to a low concentration gradient. And you can have a read for yourself for more in-depth adaptations. So here we have human's internal structure. We have a diagram over here, and here's which part separates the thorax from the abdomen, which is the diaphragm. Has a good blood supply, the alveoli, protects the lungs, ribs, is supported by rings of trachea, divides to form 2 bronchi, trachea, and moves down when you breathe in, diaphragm and abdomen. And here we have human's internal structure again. And here we have the thorax, which is the chest cavity, and it's between the neck and the abdomen, and the structure in the thorax includes these things, which is right here. And ribs are curved bones which make up the rib cage, and inside the rib cage is the lungs, and it provides physical protection for the lungs, and heart, which are inside the thorax. So here's the intercostal muscles, and it's located between each of the ribs, and when they contract, the ribs are lifted upwards and outwards, and when they relax, the ribs return to their original position. So here's the diaphragm, which is quite important to note during when you breathe, and when you breathe in and when you breathe out. So as you can see here. So here's trachea and bronchi or bronchioles. And trachea are known as windpipe and is supported by hoops of cartilage which helps to hold the trachea open. And bronchi are the trachea branches out into 2 bronchi, each to 1 lung. You can see here, bronchi and bronchioles. And here's alveoli over here. An alveoli is a site of gas exchange and is shaped as little air sacs, and it is surrounded by many blood capillaries which are in close contact with the surface of the alveoli. And the pleural membranes are, you can read, lines the inner wall of the chest and outer surfaces of each lung. So we move on now. This is the breathing system. When you inhale, the intercostal muscles contract for inhalation and it moves the ribs up and out. And when the diaphragm contracts, the thoracic cavity increases in volume, and this decreases the intra-alveolar pressure as the air flows into the lungs. And the opposite happens to exhalation. And here's a diagram over here for you to look at. So here we have ventilation. Ventilation is the movement of air into and out of the lungs in two stages, inspiration and expiration. And this is controlled by the movement of diaphragm and rib cage. And it replaces air in alveoli with fresh air. And ventilation is commonly referred to breathing. And the process is when air flows into the lungs during inhalation and out of the lungs during exhalation. And as the pressure differs between atmosphere and the gases inside the lungs, air starts to flow. And here's how ventilation occurs and how air flows over here. And here's more about pressure change. So we have diffusion now. And diffusion is a net movement of particles from an area of high concentration to an area with low concentration. And gases move across the walls of alveoli to an area of lower density than they are. And lower concentration of oxygen in alveoli and higher concentration of oxygen in the air. Therefore, oxygen enters due to diffusion. And a higher concentration of carbon dioxide in alveoli and lower concentration of carbon dioxide in the air. Therefore, carbon dioxide leaves due to diffusion as well. So here with alveolus and the blood capillaries. And gas exchange occurs as a result of respiration. And you can have a read for yourself for gas exchange. And here's diffusion. And then next we have gas exchange in leaf. So here are the features of the whole leaf. It has a flat shape, guard cells controlling the opening and closing of the stomata to regulate how much water is lost. The leaf is thin, and internal air spaces allow the gases to reach the cell. And here are the features of leaf internal structure. It has many stomata which will open when there's sunlight. Air spaces in the stoma surrounded by loosely packed mesophyll cells. The walls of spongy mesophyll and polycystic mesophyll cells are thin. And spongy cells must have moisture on the cell wall inside air spaces, surface of cells to help gas to dissolve and diffuse. So here's leaf structure. As you can see, we have the upper epidermis, the polycystic mesophyll, the spongy mesophyll, and the lower epidermis. And here's the guard cell and the stomata. So here we have stoma, or plural stomata. The stomata control gas exchange in the leaf, and each stoma can be open or closed depending on how turgid its guard cells are. And in the light, the guard cells absorb water by osmosis, becoming turgid and the stomata opens. And in the dark, the guard cells lose water and becomes flaccid and the stoma closes. And here's a more detailed version of it. Open and close. And here's the structure of the leaf. The waxy cuticle, the upper epidermis, polycystic cells, spongy mesophyll, lower epidermis, guard cells, and stomata, where gas exchange and loss of water by evaporation takes place, and opens during the day and closes at night to conserve water. So for the gas exchange, the stomata, obviously the plants need carbon dioxide to photosynthesis, so they take in photosynthesis and oxygen leaves. Then we have smoking. And smoking or cigarettes contain or releases tar, carbon monoxide, nicotine as a stimulant, and a lot more. And for tar, sticky mucus in the lungs trap pathogens, which are harmful microbes. And the mucus is normally swept out of the lungs by the cilia, but tar damages the cilia and stops working effectively. And it stops the mucus from being removed from the lungs, which leads to a buildup of mucus. And this leads to bronchitis or emphysema. And tar also contains carcinogens, which causes cancers. And for carbon monoxide combines with hemoglobin in the red blood cell better than oxygen to form carboxylic hemoglobin. And this reduces the ability of the blood to carry oxygen, and therefore less oxygen is transported to cells for respiration, which leads to death, which causes heart disease and strokes. And nicotine, which is a stimulant. Nicotine stimulates the blood vessels to constrict and release adrenaline, which speeds up the heart. Both of these actions cause the blood pressure to increase and blood goes past blood vessels fast. And where fast flowing blood can damage the smooth inner lining of the arteries, this leads to this thing over here where the blood vessels get very narrow. And here we have smoking. We have different things like emphysema, nicotine, carbon monoxide, tar, bronchitis, and coronary heart disease. And you can have a read for yourself for different things. Oops, sorry. Over here. Then we have smoking, which is more on tar. Tar causes lung cancer as it coats the lining of the lungs, and it causes cells to divide uncontrollably, causes cancer. And 90% of people who get this form of cancer are smoker. And chronic bronchitis causes chronic bronchitis, which is inflamed lungs. And bronchioles produce more mucus in response to inflammation, but the mucus clogs up in the bronchioles and reduces the movement of the cilia. And narrow airways and makes breathing very difficult, and coughing occurs, which damages the alveoli further. Here's emphysema. Bronchitis may lead to emphysema, which is the destruction of alveoli cell walls, and this is due to airways being restricted, which causes coughing to get rid of the mucus, and reduces the surface area for gas exchange. Coughing, elastic fibers in the lungs can be destroyed. Coughing to get rid of the mucus increases the pressure in the lungs. Surface area for gas exchange and the loss of elastic fibers in the lungs to reduce the body's ability to expel the air, which can make breathing very difficult. So here's more on the emphysema. So moving on, we have this question. Explain how coronary heart disease can cause death. And you can score, I believe it's a 4 or 6 marker. Yeah, it's a 6 also, like 1, 2, 3, 4, sorry, 5 marker. And out of the 5 marks, you can just mention any of these 5 from these 10 to get 5 marks. And you can have a read for the mark scheme. And then moving on, we have ciliated epithelium. And what is a ciliated epithelium? It's a cell, it's in the respiratory tract, and it uses cilia to dust away disease and infections by moving back and forth. And they also dust away the particles and dead skin to be breathed up, so we cough it out. And these cells utilize goblet cells to secrete mucus and move them around so that they catch bacteria and other foreign bodies. And the cells move them out of the body by excretion. And one thing to note is that cilia move mucus by the trapped particles into the throat or being spat out of the lungs, like when you cough or like when you sneeze. And where is it located at? Ciliated epithelium can be found in the lining of the trachea or the windpipe, like over here, the trachea, where they sweep the mucus and dirt out of the lungs, and it is found in the central part of the upper respiratory tract. Over here, as you can see here. And features of the ciliated epithelium. The ciliated epithelium have tiny hair-like structures on them, which are called cilia, and the hair sweeps hair, mucus, and trapped dust and bacteria up to the back of the throat, where it can be swallowed or expelled. And there's also the common the cell, and these cells are important in absorption and movement of mucus. And the underlying tissue is where the epithelial cells are nourished by substances diffusing from blood vessels. And lastly, how does smoking affect the ciliated epithelium? The reason why smoking is bad for human lungs is that it reduces the speed and effectiveness of the ciliated epithelial cells, causing them to process slower. Then disease and infection spread more because the epithelium cannot keep up. And then this leads to like emphysema and eventually death. And that's it for this topic 2 of IGCSE Biology series. I hope you guys have enjoyed this, and if you do, please leave a like and subscribe, and follow my Instagram page down below in the description. And check out the timestamps in the comment section, the pinned comment, to jump to whichever topic or lessons you want. I hope you guys have enjoyed this, and I'll see you guys in the next lesson. Until then, stay safe and happy learning.